All right, guys, we have 2012 Ram 3500 6.7 Cummins. This thing's throwing a four-wheel drive light with ABS and traction control light as well. I did a quick scan on it. I had a fault code in there for the right rear wheel speed sensor signal is being erratic. So first thing I did was plug the scan tool in, brought up graphs of the wheel speed signals and took it for a drive. And it was fine for the first 5 minutes. And then it didn't set codes, but I did notice that we had a bit of an intermittent erratic signal. So I took a screenshot, and then I had a couple more of those happen. And then I noticed that it just all of a sudden flatlined. And I was stuck at 407 miles an hour. The computer did not like that. So then there's the code there, a C1032. That's the fault code. So now, seeing as the signal just completely flatlined, I'm pretty sure that it could possibly be a sensor, the wiring, or the module. Most likely not the module. So probably a sensor or wiring, not the tone ring. The tone ring, for it to do that, would have to either just completely fall off, I guess, or it might not even have to do that. I don't know what would happen if you moved the tone ring out of the way far enough for it to not read a signal. It may not go to, it might just go to 0 miles an hour. I don't know, I've never tested it, but this truck's got 470,000 kilometers on it, and it lives in a real salty area, so this thing's been just plagued with wiring issues. I wouldn't be surprised if the wiring harness somewhere is gone bad. It could also be the sensor as well. So I'm gonna get this thing up in the air, and we're gonna do a visual on it and see if we... All right, so there's your sensor right here. And it runs along here and goes over up to this plug up here, those two, left and right. And then from there, it goes into the harness, which goes that way. Now, the harness is a bit tricky to get to because it runs along the top of the frame, and then you got this great big honking fuel tank that's in your way. I guess there is some room to get to it from the outside. You know, there's harness there, but still not going to be very nice, especially if you're laying down in your driveway or you don't have like a lift to access it, basically. But yeah, it runs along the top of the frame all the way to the front, where it then goes up and directly into the ABS module. So that's where it goes. Speed sensors in the back, go to connectors. The connectors go into the main harness, which runs the full length of the frame. Then that runs right up to the ABS harness. Now, we've got a connector here. This one that's really bad for getting buggered up with dirt and whatnot. It's what plugs in. That's where the harness plugs in. So there is one connector that's in between that could possibly have problems. Now,
the small one or the big one?
The big one. The small one is for something else. It might be for your fuel pump, but it is its own dedicated thing. Normally there's a fender liner in here, but I've taken it out doing a different job. So at least it gives you a good idea. There's your ABS module up there, that rusty cylinder looking thing. By the way, if you live somewhere that's really bad for rust, you might want to spray the bottom of that with oil. They're really prone to rotting out. Then you get a brake fluid leak and you're pretty much screwed. You got to change the thing. So yeah, got a connector up there that's for something that's not being used. And yeah, we're just gonna pretty much, what we're gonna do is, thank God we got problems right now, because now we can diagnose it. We're just gonna look for some spots, like you see how the harness is kind of just sitting on there. Spots that could like chafe through, that could get really bad. Like rocks and stuff get stuck in there, and it's a diesel, so it vibrates like really badly. And then it just rubs through the harness and into wiring. But what I want to do is basically just unplug the wheel speed sensor and load test the wiring from here all the way to the module and check the wires. There's only 2 wires, right? So if we can find out that it's a bad wire in the harness, then we'll go that way. If it's not a bad wire in the harness, then it's most likely the sensor. Now, I could be wrong, but I thought that this had a sensor put in it not long ago. But I think it was this side, even though it looks pretty rusty and gross, so maybe not. It's possible it was the other truck. We are unplugging our anti-lock brake module connector located just behind the battery on the driver's side. There is a gray lock tab, and you see this button looking thing that's by this green stripe. All you gotta do is just push down on that, and that releases this gray lock tab, and you just flip it forwards as you pull up on the connector. Make sure, like, these things like to get really stiff, so when you unlatch it and start pushing it, wiggle the connector a bunch and pull up, and then push the gray locking tab a little bit further, and then wiggle and pull up, and just keep doing that till it works its way up. Otherwise, if you just jam the gray connector locking latch, what'll happen is usually you break there's little plastic dowels that this thing pivots on, and they like to break off. And when you do that, you're gonna have a real hard time getting this thing off. So first thing I like to do is just take a look at the module connector pins themselves and make sure that they are not corroded. And in this case, they look nice and clean. You can see that in there. Beauty. Now I'm just going to fish this harness down and out through the fender. I have the liner out. You could just do it from right here. Pins look really clean. So our wiring just goes from here down this harness through that connector to the harness that's above the frame. So we have one section of harness here, and the other section of harness is from this connector all the way to the back. There's no connectors in between. One long piece of wire. If we find that we have a issue with something in the wiring, the next thing I'm going to do is unplug that connector to determine if it's in this wire or the other section of harness. Okay, so on our connector here, you can see we've got pin 44, that's right here, and then beside it, pin 43. So pin 44 is going to be our dark green with an orange tracer, and then pin 44 is dark green, orange tracer. 43 is dark green with light blue tracer. Now, I've made up these custom back probes that just utilize really small pins that I had. They were in a module that failed, so I cut them off and soldered them to some wire, and that way I do not damage the terminal that's on the inside of this thing, because they are very small. So I just want to stick that in there like that. You're gonna go in this row here. This row on the inside is where the pins go into, not the outside. So I'm just going to slide that in like that on pin 44. Dark green, orange tracer. Let's get this set up, and we'll see what we're going to do. A resistance check first, and then I have a light bulb that we could do a load test with, but I just want to see if there's anything obvious with the resistance check. Okay, here's our resistance measurement for pin 44, which is the dark green and orange. We are running 55 ohms, 0.55 ohms. That's pretty good. That's roughly what we want to see, about half an ohm, usually 0.6. Anything higher than like an ohm and a half, I'd be pretty concerned. But yeah, normally up to like 10 or 15 feet length of small diameter wire like this, half an ohm is like what you want to see. So that's looking good. Let's do the other side. Okay, I just pull out and do pin 43. I'm gonna go switch it down at the end. All right, we got half an ohm on the other circuit as well. So what I want to do next is we can load test them just to be sure. And we could also check for shorts to power and ground now that we have the circuit isolated. Basically, if a wire rubbed through somewhere and it's shorted to ground, that would mess with the signal as well. So we just basically do that by using our meter, and we just have this like that, and we can just check continuity to ground via the battery. So let's try that. Yeah, nothing, which is good. Open circuit means nothing is connected. That's what we want to see. Now we could whip out a battery and load test it. I have a feeling we've probably got a sensor issue that's going on. So the kind of dumb thing about this, these sensors in the back is left and right, they've made the connectors different, just like the locating tabs and stuff, so that you can't plug them in backwards. But it's kind of annoying because if they were the same, you could just swap them around from side to side and see if the code changes. So I might try to set up some pins and do it like that, and then we could maybe take it for a drive and see on the graph what those look like for the left wheel speed sensor then.